To show you how to change the filters in a reverse osmosis or RO system, we have one here that's tubing's not hooked up. Your tubing will still be hooked up. There's no reason to disconnect it. We're going to shut the water off, but for the sake of demonstration, this is going to make it a little bit easier. An RO can be a little bit intimidating the first time you change the filters because there's so many different things going on here. So to keep it simple, we're going to show you the easy way of doing it by changing one filter at a time. To change the filters in the RO, the first thing we're going to want to do is turn the water supply off. Our angle stop adapter that's connected to the cold water line has a built-in shutoff here. If the handle is pointing towards the tubing, it's on and flowing water. If we turn it 90 degrees until it stops, the water is now shut off. Once the water supply is shut off, we're going to want to shut off the water on the storage tank. Next, we're going to turn the water off on the storage tank. It has a similar valve on the top. We're pointing towards the tube is on, 90 degrees away from it is off. Turn it 90 degrees away from the tube and we've turned the water off. Changing filters is easiest and less confusing if you do them one at a time. I like to start from the side with the red tubing. This is the tap water inlet. This way we're going to go through and change each filter in the sequence the water flows. To change this filter inside of this housing, we're going to use the filter wrench. Again, our example, the tubing's not connected and yours is. It doesn't change anything. The system can still be moved, laid on its side, or worked at in any way that's easiest for you. Starting with the sediment filter and using the included filter housing wrench, go ahead and open these up. Now yours is probably going to have some water coming out of it. It's a good idea to put a little tray or something down. And once it's opened, we're just going to remove the sediment filter. Yours is probably going to be brown and kind of scuzzy looking. Not a problem, that means the filter's working. Discard the old. The new one simply falls inside. You'll see two holes that line up, and there's a nipple in the bottom of the housing. That's going to hold the filter in place. Once it's back, you get it lined up. You're going to thread it back together, going clockwise this time, and tighten it up with the filter housing wrench. We're going to do the same thing moving to the carbon pre-filter. We're going to undo it going counterclockwise. Remove the old filter element and discard it. Insert the new in the same way, using the holes in the center of the filter as a guide. Thread it back on clockwise and tighten it down with the filter housing wrench. Next, we're going to come to the filters on the top. The filters on the top, we're going to change two with the annual package, and then the membrane every other filter change. So all the filters in an RO system are annual except the membrane. That only needs to be changed every other time. So to make this easier, these are all literally held together with clips. These filters can pop right off so that you can access them a little easier. Moving on to the filters on the top, let's start with the taste and odor filter. There's an arrow that's going to dictate the direction of flow. This is important, and be sure to look at the one on top that we're replacing to make sure we get the flow going in the right direction. Also, these filters are going to come with 1 to 2 different adapter fittings. Your system may or may not need them. We include them with every one that goes out, every replacement, in case you do. So to change this filter, the first thing we're going to want to do is disconnect the fitting with the white tubing in it. This is the push to connect type fitting, and there's a collet. We need to press that collet in and hold it in while pulling the fitting out. We can then set this aside. We're going to do the same thing in the opposite end, where we're going to depress that collet and holding it in, we're going to slide the fitting out to remove. As we're getting ready, before we remove this filter, again, double check the direction and make sure the arrow is pointing in the same direction. We can then unclip, discard, and pop the new filter into place. With the push connects, we again are going to push in, give it a little pull, reconnect our second tube, give it a test pull, perfect. Moving on to the second filter, which is the remineralizing. It's the same style push to connect fittings. We're going to depress the collet, and while holding it in, slide out the fittings. Again, before we remove the filter we're changing, double check the directional arrow and make sure that we are reinserting the replacement filter with the flow arrow pointing in the same direction. Reinstall the fittings by pushing in, a little tug to make sure that they're secure, and the top two filters are now replaced. Next, we're going to show you how to change the membrane. Again, remember, this isn't every filter change. We only change the membrane every other filter change. So, to start with, the membrane is this piece here on the bottom. And there's two different ends that can be identified by the number of tubes that connect. The back end will have two. The cap end will only have one tube. This is the cap that's going to come off so we can change the membrane inside. Unlike the remin and the taste and odor filters, this filter element is inside of a housing. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to disconnect, remove, not disconnect, both the remin and the taste and odor filters. Outside of those clips, they can just hang back like that. It's not going to hurt anything, and this way we can get to the remin, or the membrane. These clips just slide right on and off. With the clips removed and the other filters hanging back behind, we can pull the membrane housing right out of its clips. It'll be a little easier for you if you disconnect this tube and it's the same quick connect style. Now the cap will unscrew in a counterclockwise motion. Once out, you can see the inside of the membrane. This membrane will need to come out. It might be easier to remove this with a small set of pliers. It fits in there pretty tight. Once removed, we can replace the membrane with the new one. You'll see two different ends. One has this larger black O-ring and the other one does not. This O-ring always faces towards the cap. So we put it in, push it in to fit. We can then, in a clockwise motion, replace the membrane housing cap. Make sure it's good and tight. Reconnect that 1/4 inch tubing. It will snap right back into place. And we can then start putting the filter clips back on the membrane and getting everything reassembled. This stage, nothing is disconnected, it's just kind of strewn about for the ease of getting to everything. There's no special trick to these clips. They really just fall in and out of place. They're easily movable, and there's not a right or a wrong place. Wherever they can go to hold everything back. And that is how you change a membrane and all the different filter components inside of a reverse osmosis system. Again, it is always easiest to do this one step at a time. Change one filter before moving on to the next. If you start to feel lost, if you refer to the manual, which can also be found on our website, it will give you a diagram of how all this different plumbing and everything goes together. You shouldn't need it going slow. However, if you do, it can really help. With the filters now changed, we can turn the water back on. Again, we're going to go to the angle stop, and we need to make sure that the handle is pointing towards the red line. Towards the red line is in the on position, 90 degrees away from it is off. We're going to turn this water back on. Now we need to turn the water back on at the tank. Again, same type of valve. We need to turn it to the on and open position where the handle's in line with the tubing. 90 degrees away is off. In the same direction is on. Now that our water is back on and our storage tank is opened up, the RO is going to start making water again. You're going to hear it turn on, start making that quiet click type noise from the pump moving back and forth. Give it a few hours, the tank will be full. Open it up, let the water drain out. You're going to want to refill and empty the first 2 tanks of water just to get everything cleaned and flushed out, and then you're ready to start drinking good, clean, healthy water again. Thank you.